Today I've got block number 15 to share with you. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Kathy from the Delafield Quilt Company, and this video is part of a series called the Slow Summer Star Series, where we do one different star block every week for the whole summer. If you're interested in following along in this series, I'll put a link in the show description. Block number 15 is pretty simple and comes together really quickly because we use 2 at a time half square triangles. So I hope that you like the video. And the fabric that I have for this one is just this nice floral print with the aqua color and the gray. And then of course the background fabric as well. I've already cut the background fabric, but let me tell you what we need for this block. We're going to need from fabric A, 4 4-inch squares, and from fabric B, 4 4-inch squares. And then for the background, we're going to also need 4 4-inch squares and 4 3.5-inch squares. So since I'm cutting 4-inch squares from both A and B, I'm just going to layer my 2 pieces here. I'm just going to cut an 8-inch square and then divide it into the 4 squares that I need. So I'm going to actually go a little bit bigger than 8 inches because I want to cut that fringe off from the layer cake squares. I'm using an 8.5-inch ruler for this. It's nice to have a variety of rulers for when you're doing these cuts. Alright, I got that fringe off of that. And I'm just going to cut it in half at the 4-inch mark. Once. Turn it, and then I'm going to do 4 inches again. Alright, now I have my 4-inch squares. And then again, I've already got my background fabric cut. Alright, let me bring in my test block here just to show you how we're going to put this together. Basically, we're going to just make a bunch of half square triangles. We're going to make some with the A and B together, and then some with the A and B each with the background fabric. So for my sets, I'm just going to pair these together. I'm going to need 2 sets of the A and B together, and then 2 sets with the A fabric with the background and the B fabric with the background. And then I'm going to draw a diagonal line down the back of one of the squares for each of the sets, and I'm going to just pick the lightest one. And I'm just going from corner to corner to make sure I'm right on that corner. And I'm just going to repeat that. And on the A and B ones, I'm just going to pick the back of this nice aqua color block. Sometimes it's helpful just to start in the middle when you're drawing your line so you don't get that corner kind of bent by your writing utensil. Alright, one more here. Okay, now that I've got all my lines drawn, I'm just going to pair them back up here. And right sides together, I'm going to then sew them a 1/4 inch using a scant 1/4 inch along both sides of the lines that I drew earlier. It is really important to use a scant 1/4 inch to make sure that we aren't short. And if you're a little worried about getting an accurate scant 1/4 inch, just make your squares a little bit bigger. Instead of 4 inch, maybe do 4 1/4 inch. That way you give yourself a little leave room, and we're going to trim these down anyways, so don't stress yourself out about it. Alright, I've got all my pairs together. You might want to pin these in place. I'm just going to hold them with my fingers, and I'm going to go sew them. Again, I'm using a scant 1/4 inch. I'm just going to sew on both sides of the line. You could daisy chain all these pieces together, but I think I'm just going to sew one at a time. Alright, so I got all of my pieces sewn, and I should have mentioned earlier, before I even cut my squares, I starched everything really well, just to make sure they were nice and crisp. Okay, now we're just going to cut on the line that we drew earlier, and then we'll have our 2 half square triangles. I have all of my half square triangles pressed, and I did press the seams just to one side. I know some quilters prefer when making these to press them open, because then when they go to trim them, it lies nice and flat. Of course, it's up to you. Whatever method you choose is whatever method you want to choose. Okay, now we just need to trim each of these down to 3.5 inch squares. Hopefully, if our 1/4 inch seam was good and our cuts were good, we shouldn't have to trim too much. And then we just need to trim these down to 3.5 inch squares. So hopefully if our 1/4 inch scant seam was good and our cuts were good, we shouldn't have to trim too much. As you can see, I just got a tiny little bit here. And I am using my 45-degree mark of my ruler, and I'm lining it up on the seam of that half square triangle just to make sure I've got it in the right spot. And I'm just going to trim 2 sides first. And I'm going to turn it 180 degrees. And I'm going to trim the other side. All right, so I'm going to continue then trimming all these blocks down to 3.5 inches. Okay, I had to pause the video a little bit because I had a little bit of an accident, which is a good reminder to be very careful when you're using your rotary blade. It was one of those mistakes where I know better. You should always look down as you're cutting, and I looked up for some reason and I got my finger. And is it bad that my first instinct after it happened was to make sure to save the fabric because I did not want to get blood on the fabric? And then I went and got the first aid for my finger. All right, we are ready to lay this one out. I think the hardest part about this block is just trimming them down. Otherwise, everything is super simple. It comes together pretty quick. All right, let me just get my sides started here. Yeah, I'll move it up so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, got my sides here. And then my center pieces, I'm just lining these up because we're going to create essentially a pinwheel here. Gotta make sure I have them in the right direction. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in my 3.5 inch squares from earlier, and those are going to be on each of the corners. All right, I am going to just sew these by rows first, and then I'm going to press the seams so that they're going opposite directions per row, and then I'll sew the whole piece together. And then I'm going to come back and show you what it looks like when it's done. And there we have the finished block, block number 15. If you're sewing along, that is awesome, and I would absolutely love to see your pictures. If you want to email them to me, I'll put a link in the show notes, or you can follow me on Instagram, and I'll also put a link in the show notes on that too. So thank you for watching this video. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and visit our little online shop at delafieldquiltco.com. Have a great day.